You remember the ritual? Friday night, fluorescent aisles, the smell of plastic cases and carpet. Blockbuster owned that moment for a generation. And you probably know what killed it. A $50 million offer from a DVD by mail startup called Netflix reportedly laughed out of a Dallas boardroom in the year 2000. It's one of the most famous bad calls in corporate history. But here's what almost nobody talks about. Blockbuster said no to Netflix twice. And the second time, they weren't blind to the threat. They were beating it. At the turn of the century, Blockbuster was an undisputed colossus. Operating over 9,000 locations worldwide, the retail giant controlled the weekend rituals of millions of households. To the executive suite in Dallas, this physical footprint was an impenetrable moat. Against this empire stood Netflix, a struggling, unprofitable startup with just 300,000 subscribers relying on the slow logistics of the United States Postal Service. When Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph flew to Texas in early 2000, they were seeking a lifeline. The tech bubble was bursting, cash was drying up, and their business was bleeding money. The proposed transaction was straightforward. Blockbuster would purchase the startup, and the founders would build and run the giant's online operation. Chief Executive Officer John Antioco and his board of directors, confident in their physical dominance, dismissed the online rental concept. They viewed their brand equity and immediate physical proximity to consumers as assets that no digital service could replicate. To them, the dot-com frenzy was overblown, and the mail-order model was a tiny, unprofitable niche. The Netflix team walked out empty-handed, forced to fight for survival on their own. This is the event corporate history remembers, the classic fable of an incumbent failing to recognize the future. But this familiar narrative obscures a far more complex reality. The 2000 decision did not destroy Blockbuster. The company continued to expand and generate massive cash flow for years. The true point of no return arrived 4 years later, in late 2004, under vastly different circumstances. This second refusal was not born of ignorance. It occurred when the retail giant had finally built a weapon capable of neutralizing Netflix entirely, only to turn the weapon on itself. In February 2000, the physical world dictated the rules of commerce. Blockbuster operated as a highly profitable machine anchored by thousands of properties, millions of active members, and a dominant brand. Its stores were the weekend destination for families across the globe, generating consistent cash flow. From the perspective of CEO John Antioco and his board, the $50 million price tag Reed Hastings placed on Netflix was an expensive gamble on an unproven, unprofitable mailing service. To understand the decision is to examine the concept of corporate stewardship. In ancient text, the servant in the parable of the talents hides his master's resource in the earth to protect it. He acts out of a desire to preserve what already exists, fearing the risk of the unknown. Blockbuster's leadership operated under a similar logic. They believed their primary duty was to guard the physical infrastructure they had built. Stores, immediate shelf availability, and physical convenience formed their competitive moat. To divert $30 million in cash and $20 million in stock into a mail-order startup with 300,000 subscribers seemed like a violation of sound financial planning. Contemporary press coverage and subsequent corporate folklore have framed this meeting as a moment of blind arrogance, a comedy of errors where the giant simply laughed the disruptor out of the room. But inside the boardroom, the analysis was cold and rational. The dot-com crash was beginning to wipe out paper wealth. Tech companies with soaring valuations but zero profits were collapsing daily. To Antioco, paying $50 million for a company bleeding cash was an unjustifiable dilution of Blockbuster's equity. When Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph presented the proposal, they offered a partnership. Netflix would handle the online space, while Blockbuster would manage the physical stores. The board saw little value in ceding control of their brand to an entity that relied entirely on the postal service. The decision was a calculated defense of a proven business model against what looked like a passing, speculative bubble. The refusal showed how the company defined its purpose as a manager of physical retail space rather than a distributor of entertainment. But this initial mistake was only the first layer of the collapse. It is easy to point to the year 2000 and claim the destiny of both companies was sealed in that single room. In reality, the physical empire remained highly profitable for years afterward, and the real damage was not done by a failure to buy the future early. The fatal blow came later when Blockbuster actually built its own online engine, only to dismantle it from within. This first rejection is the story everyone knows, but it is the second rejection, years later, that reveals the true tragedy of the company's self-sabotage. The rejection of Reed Hastings in the spring of 2000 was not the fatal blow. It is the transaction everyone remembers, but that famous mistake was not even the fatal one. For years after that meeting, the physical rental business remained highly profitable, generating hundreds of millions of dollars in cash. The true point of self-destruction came later when Blockbuster designed a competitive weapon so effective it threatened to sweep Netflix off the board entirely, only to turn that weapon on itself. In late 2004, under the direction of CEO John Antioco, Blockbuster launched its online rental counteroffensive, which soon became a hybrid subscription model known as Total Access. The concept was simple yet devastating to a pure-play digital competitor. For a flat monthly fee, subscribers received movies in the mail, just like Netflix. But instead of waiting days for the post office to process returns, Blockbuster customers could walk into any of the company's 9,000 physical stores, exchange their mailer over the counter, and walk out with a new movie immediately. It combined the convenience of digital queues with the instant gratification of physical retail. The model worked. By merging the digital and physical worlds, Blockbuster eliminated the lag time that was Netflix's only vulnerability. Within months, subscriber growth surged, briefly outpacing Netflix's acquisition rate. Retention rates rose and customer acquisition costs fell because every brick-and-mortar storefront functioned as a free billboard. Blockbuster had built a platform that Netflix, with no physical footprint, could not replicate. Yet this weapon rested on a profound financial paradox. To fund this expansion and make Total Access work, Antioco had to eliminate the company's most lucrative revenue stream, late fees. In 2004, late fees brought in $800 million, representing 16% of total sales. Renters loved the change, but eliminating the fees meant walking away from pure margin cash, a decision that troubled a board of directors addicted to short-term yields. Ancient wisdom warns that pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. For Blockbuster, the pride lay in their legacy physical dominance and in the stubborn belief that they could protect these high-margin habits while fighting a war for the future. John Antioco was willing to bleed short-term cash to win. The board saw only a threat. In early 2005, activist investor Carl Icahn acquired a 10% stake in Blockbuster, quickly becoming its largest shareholder. Icahn saw a retail model being drained of its cash by a costly, unproven online experiment. To him, Total Access was a value-destroying distraction. By May 2005, the conflict erupted into a public proxy war. Icahn filed proxy materials with the Securities and Exchange Commission, urging shareholders to replace the board. The strategy worked. Shareholders approved his slate, installing Icahn, Strauss-Zelnick, and Edward Bleer. The governance structure of the company changed overnight, shifting the board's mandate from strategic expansion to immediate cash protection. The boardroom battle quickly became a proxy for strategic disagreement, focusing on executive pay. For the fiscal year 2006, the new board offered CEO John Antioco a conditional bonus of just $2.28 million, citing discretionary performance metrics. Antioco, who had spent his tenure building a hybrid network to neutralize Netflix, pointed to his growing subscriber base and demanded the $7.65 million outlined in his contract. This was a war over the company's identity. Antioco was a leader punished for trying to bridge two incompatible business models, risking short-term margins to secure a long-term future. The board, guided by activist incentives, prioritized short-term yields over survival. In March 2007, the bitter deadlock broke. The board agreed to a compromise, a $3.05 million bonus combined with a $4.99 million lump sum termination payment. Antioco was forced out. By removing the creator of Total Access, the board protected its immediate cash flow. But in securing their capital, they had severed the strategic brain of the company. A new leadership was about to take control, carrying a clear mandate to dismantle the very platform that had Netflix on the defensive, setting off a sequence of decisions that crossed a line the giant could never uncross. In July 2007, James Keyes took control of Blockbuster with a clear mandate to protect the immediate balance sheet. The former retail executive, who had previously led 7-Eleven through a massive restructuring, looked at the growing digital subscription base and saw a threat to short-term cash. The leadership transition was not a tactical adjustment, it was a strategic retreat. The company stopped defending its future and began defending its present. During his first quarterly earnings call, Keyes articulated the new corporate doctrine. Our priority is to return to a cash-generating model. The total access experiment, while innovative, has eroded our high-margin stream. The dismantling was swift and deliberate. In May 2007, Blockbuster announced the termination of the mail-order component of the hybrid service. Instead of a seamless digital-physical bridge, 1.8 million subscribers were abruptly converted to a store-only plan priced at $14.99 per month. By July, the company retired the Total Access brand completely, attempting to placate departing users with a nominal $5 migration credit. This was not a case of an incumbent failing to see the future. The winning path had been designed, built, and proven, only to be actively dismantled. In the biblical parable of the talents, the fearful servant buries his master's resource in the dirt to preserve what already exists, believing that safety lies in stagnation. Blockbuster's new leadership acted on that same fear. They withdrew to the perceived safety of their physical properties, protecting immediate retail margins while abandoning the very platform that had Netflix on the defensive. But the market does not wait for a company to finish its internal arguments. While Dallas celebrated the preservation of its near-term cash flow, the digital environment continued to shift. Financial projections indicate that if Total Access had survived, the hybrid model could have reached nearly 8 million subscribers by 2012, providing the scale and capital necessary to transition into streaming. Instead, by cutting away its own engine of growth, Blockbuster left itself exposed to the very forces it had briefly managed to contain. Let's analyze this counterfactual not as a sentimental rewrite, but as a disciplined, strategic exercise. If Blockbuster had maintained the actual 30% year-over-year subscriber growth curve of Total Access, model projections indicate the company would have reached 5 million subscribers by 2009 and nearly 8 million by 2012. At that scale, the hybrid platform would have stabilized operating margins above 10%, generating hundreds of millions of dollars in predictable, recurring cash flow. The value of this analysis is not to guarantee an absolute victory over Netflix. Instead, it reveals the loss of strategic optionality. In business, cash flow and time are the greatest currencies because they buy choices. With a base of 5 million active digital subscribers and thousands of physical stores, the company would have possessed the operational strength to partner, license, or transition into digital streaming on its own terms, perhaps delaying its rivals' dominance. By burying their resources in the earth to protect short-term retail margins, the board did not avoid risk. They surrendered their choices. This is the true warning of the ancient parable of the talents. The fearful servant was condemned not because he lost the asset, but because his obsession with safety paralyzed his ability to adapt. When Blockbuster dismantled its hybrid engine, the company's strategic decision tree collapsed into a single terminal branch. They had no backup plan, no digital hedge, and soon, no time left. The 2010 bankruptcy of Blockbuster was not a tragedy of ignorance, but of stewardship. Leadership did not fail to see the future. They built the exact weapon needed to survive, then chose to dismantle it to protect immediate cash flow. By defending the short-term comfort of legacy margins, the board forfeited the entire empire. This remains the silent trap of success, when the incentive to guard yesterday's gains overrides the duty to build tomorrow. It forces a modern reading of the ancient query: what does it profit to gain the whole world yet forfeit your soul? Blockbuster saved its near-term balance sheet, only to lose its reason to exist. Enterprises rarely die from a single competitor. They die when internal governance allows a profitable habit to become a suicide pact. A house divided against itself cannot stand. Today, this corporate civil war plays out in every industry facing disruption. The danger is not failing to see the future. It is the fatal urge to destroy your own innovation to protect yesterday's profits. What legacy habit is quietly poisoning your future right now? Share your thoughts below and subscribe for more strategic autopsies.